So, hello everyone. Welcome to one more Eden session. This is the last session within Eden Open Education Week, our contribution to the global initiative of Open Education Week. I hope you enjoyed the sessions previous 3 days. Today, we are having a session titled The Evolving Story of Open Education, Expanding Access, Furthering Equity, and Reckoning the Ongoing Challenges. And I'm very happy to have today with me distinguished speakers, all from Ireland, but there was a really good reason for that. First, let me introduce today my speakers. Just first briefly, like Celine Peignen, Claire McAvinia, and Angélica Rísquez, who are coming from the island and are the force behind the open education resource using OER and OEP for teaching and learning at Ireland's National Forum for Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. The Catherine Cronin is the fourth one, but unfortunately she couldn't join us today. So that was the main reason why we invited these ladies today to speak about this initiative and why it is important. And then to critically reflect and examine the progress, challenges, and future of open education in higher education. And first, just give me time that I properly introduce my speakers today. So Celine Peignen is the head librarian at Technology University of Shannon in Ireland. She has significant experience leading open education resources initiatives. And over past 5 years, she has driven institution OER project, positioning the university as a leader in OER and OEP in Ireland. And this work has involved development of Technological University of Shannon Open Press, hiring the first OER librarian in Ireland, the creation of OER indexed use globally, strategic collaboration with other institutions, and advocacy for open access and OER integration in teaching and learning materials. With colleagues of the European Network for Open Educational Librarians, she was the recipient of OER Global Award in 2023, recognizing the work done by the network to support librarians in Ukraine. Dr. Claire McAvinia is an academic developer at the Center for Academic Practice, Trinity College Dublin, working with colleagues to provide expertise in learning, teaching, and assessment in higher education. She has more than 25 years' experience in related roles at TU Dublin, Maynooth University, and University College London. Claire completed a secondment with Ireland's National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in 2021. She is a fellow of the UK Staff and Education Development Association, SEDA, and Advanced HE. Together with Roisin Donnelly and Dr. Kevin O'Rourke, she co-edits the Open Access Irish Journal of Academic Practice. She holds a BA and PhD from Trinity College Dublin, MA from University of Kent, and MA in Online and Distance Education from the UK Open University. Her research interests are in all aspects of academic, professional development, and open education and post-digital learning spaces in higher education. And Dr. Angélica Rísquez is a lead educational developer at the Center for Transformative Learning, University of Limerick. She has over 20 years experience in higher education. She is a senior fellow at SEDA and winner of Pedagogical Award 2024 of University of Limerick with the project Still Alive, Learning Analytics for Student Success. She teaches at postgraduate level in Graduate Diploma in Teaching, Learning and Scholarship at her university and the Master's in Career Guidance in UNED. She has led innovation and research projects funded nationally and internationally around digital capacity and open educational practice. She has extensively published in different areas related to technology-enhanced learning, and her current research interests include blended and online learning, digital capacity in higher education, and learning analytics for student success. So thank you for joining me today. And just want to say to all the participants, you can put the comments and questions into the chat. Also, you can greet everyone here in the chat. And let me start with the first question. As I said, we want to introduce this initiative to set up the space using OER and OEP for teaching and learning in Ireland's National Forum for Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. What was the reason for that, and what do you expect to accomplish? So Claire, maybe floor is yours for further beginning.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you for the warm welcome and indeed for the invitation to participate in the panel from all of us. And our colleague, Catherine Cronin, sends her apologies. She's very sorry not to be able to be here today. I had the good fortune to work with Catherine in the National Forum in Ireland at the time that this project was being thought about and being planned. And I can fill you in a little bit on that. So the National Forum for Colleagues Outside Ireland is a government body that was established more than 10 years ago. It now sits within the Higher Education Authority in Ireland, which is the main body that oversees the publicly funded universities. And it was the first time we had an agency like that, which was expressly to look at the enhancement of learning, teaching and assessment in higher education in Ireland. So it has a wide range of initiatives ongoing, and they were framed under strategic plans for the forum. And this was part of the most recent strategic plan leading up to 2021. So one strand of that plan was teaching and learning in a digital world. And within that, we had two pieces of work around open specifically. So enabling policies for digital and open teaching and learning and supporting open education. So they were very active in this space. And it was particularly helpful to have Catherine's expertise, she's been working in this for a very long time. I came into this by dint of having worked on a repository project some years ago, and Angélica and Celine are familiar with this as well. They might say more about it later. So there was a national repository for OERs established in Ireland in the mid-2000s, but as was the pattern in many places, when we hit the economic downturn, funding obviously was a challenge, and that was discontinued. So there was a lot of thinking around, what do we do next? Do we try to establish something like that? Do we look at where people are at with this? So this was really the first step, was to design and publish a resource that would reintroduce the topic for people, get them tuning back into this again, thinking about open education resources and practices. So not just the resources in isolation, but what open educational practice means. And there was also a conversation around progressing on towards something like an open course or a digital badge. But in the first instance, we thought something that was completely open itself and didn't require registration or taking part in a course was the best way to go. So it took off from there. And again, very fortunately, Angélica and Celine were available to get involved and to work on this. So the four of us began to work on it together and to plan how it might take shape. So that's how it all started off.
Thank you. Maybe Celine and Angélica, would you add a little bit about it? What do you find it today? Are you satisfied with what you have accomplished? Where do you see some future things that you want to add to that resource?
Do you want to follow there, Celine? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's we've seen the resource being reused already. Other universities have taken the work, adapted it, and we published it. So the most recent one, I think, is the Glasgow Caledonian University. So it's absolutely fantastic to see the resource getting a second life and being spread even more. I mean, you know, as Claire has said, the whole point was to have something out there without, you know, needing to get into something or get accreditation or certification. We're probably at the point now where it would be a great, next life for the resource to actually offer some kind of certification or accreditation with it.
Yeah, from my side of things, they're saying that it's something that I've integrated seamlessly as part of our program on academic practice. We do deliver continuous professional development to teachers, where we believe it's important that they have some literacy around open educational practice in general. And we also try to practice what we preach while embedding open assessment approaches and using these resources as one of the tools that we've used as part of that.
Yeah, but thank you. I think that such initiative is transferable into other environment, other universities or institutions can replicate what you have prepared if it's in their own language, because usually the language is a main reason for making another repository. So I think this is a good example how it can be done, and I invite everyone to go and to look at the resources. But let's move on to the issue of the benefits of using open educational resources and open educational practices in teaching and learning. What are the key benefits? Often people say, why should I do it? Why should I put something to be open? So Angélica, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, we did a piece of research in terms of under the umbrella of the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning in Ireland. Claire was part of that with a team of colleagues from across the sector. And I think some of the findings from that still stand, in that there's different arguments, obviously, around the open educational movement. It's linked to the SDGs and it's linked to some ethical and value-driven considerations around access to education, also understanding knowledge as a public good. Most of us work in public institutions, and we understand that we are paid by our taxpayers and we should give back accordingly to society. And it's also as well at the discipline level, people understand that that we gain from others and we build on our discipline by sharing back as well. So that's I suppose disciplinarity, intersharing is very important. And I would also, I suppose, the Anna Loridar's conversational framework is a particular theoretical approach that I often refer to in my own teaching practice, and indeed teaching philosophy, because she advocates for this concept of teaching as a design science, where we don't none of us produces educational material out of the thin air. Everything is somewhat an adaptation and enhancing and building on other knowledge. And this idea of opening the boundaries of traditionally closed boundaries of the classroom is one that I try to integrate in my practice and in other people's practice. So yeah, I can put link to that if anyone wants to learn more about it.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yes, that theoretical framework from Diane Lorla serves all of us. We are often using it as well, especially as called, we are using it within the ABC method, of learning design, but the openness as well is a very important part of that. Just before we continue, I will have a question for the audience, because we want to be sure that audience is also integrated. And just let me set the question. So I would kindly ask the audience to go to the slido.com, and there's a hashtag 385646A. We have the same question for the audience on the key benefits of using OER for teaching and learning. And these are some of the factors we find important. So like increased access to educational materials for students, ability to customize and adapt resources to fit course needs, enhancement of collaborative and innovative teaching practices, cost savings for students and institutions, improve student engagement and learning outcomes. These are just some of the factors we find important, but we would like to hear also your opinion on this. So yeah, we will just give a few minutes for participants to reflect on this question as well, and then a comment on it. So let's see how the answers are coming. Okay, I hope we can get more than 10 because we are quite a large number here. So it would be good to have at least 20 answers, in order that the answers have the point of everyone. Looking so far, Claire, what would you say? Is this a surprise, or do you agree with the answer so far?
I think that we would see this coming through in research, Sandra. So yeah, it's nice to see the increased access for students coming out, edging a little bit ahead there as being important to people. And I think we've seen this particularly where I've seen this come really to the foreground has been in the US, where we've had a long-running discussion around the cost of textbooks. And I know that's been a concern in Ireland as well, that's prohibitive for students. And so the open textbooks that we've seen produced, I've looked at many of those myself in my work, and the quality of those resources, as well as smaller OERs that people can integrate with what they're doing. I think it's absolutely key. Many colleagues will be familiar with the economic pressures that we are under in our various jurisdictions in Ireland. We have a housing crisis. Students are finding it impossible to find accommodation near to the universities, and it's very expensive when they do. They're doing long commutes. So we have a raft of issues around cost of living for students, and anything we can do to improve access and to remove cost barriers is clearly very important. So yeah, I guess that doesn't surprise me, but I also think it's really good to see that as a principle anyway, that we would improve access to materials for our students.
Thank you. Thank you all of you who answered. I'll now stop sharing the screen. You still can answer, the participants still can answer to the question, but maybe we could go on to another question. Celine, despite growing awareness, systematic change in policy and practice remains slow. What are the biggest barriers to institutional adoption of open education? Do you see ways to overcome them?
Great question, Sandra. Look, I mean, those barriers, as we know, they're often entrenched in systemic structures, as you mentioned, the need for systemic change. Let's reflect on the barriers. I mean, just to give you examples, to me, the resistance to change in institutional culture is a big one. Many institutions struggle with a deeply ingrained traditional education culture. Faculty members, administrators, staff may be hesitant to embrace new technologies or move into open access models. And that's definitely due to the comfort that we have with established systems, and the fear of disruption, of change. So the challenge there is changing mindsets and trying to create a buy-in from all our stakeholders, faculties, managements, and so on. The next one, I'd say lack of policy support and institutional commitment. Again, reinforcing the need for our leaders, senior management in higher education institution. We need their buy-in. There's very often an absence of clear institutional policies on OER. You might have an OA policy, but not necessarily an integration of the OER policy underneath that. So obviously, this is limiting the scope of our OER initiatives and their integration into our teaching and learning policies and so on. So that's another big piece. Another one, and this will be down to finance, the insufficient infrastructure and resources around OER. I mean, developing, maintaining, sharing OER, that requires a well-established infrastructure. So we need to invest in that. So many educators would see value in OER, but if the institution isn't supporting that to provide the necessary tools, the platforms, the guidance to create and adapt OER, we're at nothing here. Again, there's a cost in the creation, there's a cost in maintaining repositories. There's a need for the dedicated staff and technical support. Another one, and it's one that we see very often, probably the easiest to overcome, is the lack of training and the lack of professional development in that area. So for OER adoption to be effective, we must equip our educators with the knowledge, the skills to implement OEPs in their courses. Many educators lack the necessary professional development. They haven't had the training. They're not getting the opportunities to meaningfully engage with OEP and OER. So somehow, if you're not empowering them, it's going to limit their willingness to engage with it, right? Now, sustainability, and I've mentioned that again, we're looking at the same issues there. The long-term sustainability of OER and the initiatives, often a concern here. The financial human resources needed for OER development and for the management. OER, as we know, they're freely accessible. But again, the cost involved in creating, adapting, maintaining the resources can be a significant barrier, another thing. So look, to me, those are the main barriers. Can we overcome them? Yes, we can overcome them. We need OEP, OER champions within our institutions. We need a clear line of communications with our senior managers. If your senior manager gets it, then the university will get it, and then the support will come. So to me, it's the key is there. It takes time, the training and offering training on a regular basis is something that we can do, I suppose, at a unit level, with academics, with colleagues. But if senior managers are only looking at OER as a kind of a short term or as a new trend, then we're at nothing. So key again, institutional buy-in, senior management support.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Often top-down approach is quite needed because we can go bottom up, but without the decision on a higher level, it still can be just initiative that exists on the optimism of those.
Yeah, and look, we need policies. We need financial support. I have been very fortunate in my own institution. Our senior managers get it. So, we have been able to develop our own open press. It's just an example. We're able to run regular training sessions. We're able to communicate with our faculty leaders. We're able to integrate OE and OER into reading lists. But that's because we've been listened to from the start, and that's because our own institution is able to see the benefit to our users. As Claire mentioned earlier, the cost, which was I think 4 or 15 in the last poll, the cost of resources it's gone exorbitant. Budgets, it's not sustainable. Libraries are absolutely hemorrhaging cash, and trying to bring in more and more resources. So OER is answering an awful lot of questions there. We can offer a more diverse collection. Our users are benefiting, libraries are benefiting, colleagues are benefiting. Let's push.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe Claire, you can add, how is this situation at your institution? Do you have the adequate support and ensure the sustainability in using open education resources and storing them? How is this as the university situation?
I think what I would say for Trinity at the moment is that there's certainly lots of importance around open scholarship and open as a principle. I see that here. I have a wonderful colleague, Niamh Brennan, in library, who's been a champion around this whole area for many years and a leading national expert who I've worked with before in other roles. And so that is there. I think the issue around teaching at the moment, if you talk to an academic within a discipline, is, I suppose, the number of competing priorities, and in particular the let me say it, panic around GenAI and assessment. So issues like that come along. Before that, it was the disruption of the pandemic. So certain things pull the attention, and there's a limited number of things that they can give attention to because of the day-to-day pressures of teaching and learning within the timetable. So I think there are ways to address a number of challenges, including GenAI, through some of this work. But it's getting to that stage of having the conversation with people who are extremely busy and letting them know that some of that support is actually there and is already there. Something I should have mentioned earlier at the outset is that the National Forum actually went on to develop a resource hub to share its own resources and to encourage academics to share that way. So that's still quite new. That's a few years old, and these things take time to bed down. But even awareness raising of that and encouraging, more use of that, I think, is something that we could still be doing, and it has no extra cost associated at that level. But it's sustaining it, as Celine is saying, that builds towards something, and that the strategy is connected. That we talk to librarians and then we talk to staff, and we are all talking to each other rather than the silo issue that can happen in higher education sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I can just share the experience from Croatia, where we still do not have much support from the top in that. I just did some research on that lately, and when I ask the vice deans and the committees for quality assurance, who should decide if the educational material should be present as open education resource, they say it's upon the teacher. So it's still not something that is decided, like something that would benefit to all of us, but just the decision of individual teachers if they decide to do it or not. So yeah, I would say that in Ireland, so far as I see, you are very advanced in that, but still there are things that should be done and where there's a possibility to progress. Maybe Angélica, you can share the experience from your universities. How are things there? You have to turn on the mic.
I apologize, sorry. Yeah, I was saying that it's a complex reality, as Celine was saying. I think I agree that libraries are leading the way to a good extent. From the teaching perspective, the picture I don't think is that clear. As Claire was saying, at the national and institutional level, there needs to be a strategic priority. In my view, there's sometimes internal developments that are against this. For example, what I see as an increase in reliance on external vendors and proprietary resources for the provision of education. And that kind of locks away our capacity to make decisions around the values underpinning the provision of education and what we can do with resources and how equitable is access. Yeah, I suppose from a side of things, I feel somewhat conflicted that the open education agenda is permeating from rhetorics into practice in a lot of levels, to be honest.
Thank you. Maybe we could have another question for the audience related to this topic so that we get their reflection as well. So just let me go to, sorry, did I okay. Change the slide? Where can I change the slide? Just a second. It stayed open just to see. Okay, I shared the wrong thing, sorry. Okay, share. Sorry, how do I get further? Here.
While you're doing that, Sandra, I just see a comment in the chat about the legislation. So we might pick up on that. I think that's been a really big issue over many years, is the uncertainty around intellectual property and the coverage there. So just to acknowledge that comment, but we'll come back to it.
Yeah, thank you. So question to the audience is, what are the most significant factors influencing the successful implementation of OER in higher education? So we chose some of the factors we find important. So institutional support and policies, faculty awareness and training, technical infrastructure and accessibility, financial incentives and funding, and student engagement and adoption. So you just continue on slide. It's a next question. So it's still hashtag 3856462. So let's see what the audience think are the important factors for successful implementation of OER in higher education. So just give them some time to answer. I hope we will get more than 4 questions, at least 15 to 20. So far, I see that institutional support and policies at the top, and the financial incentives are at the 4th place, So sometimes it says the finances are important, that we cannot do anything without finances. But here we can see the institutional support and policies. Maybe Celine, you could comment a little bit on the present results.
Yeah, well, look, the first institutional support and policies, back down to what I was saying earlier, you need to have your organization backing what you're doing there, but there has to be an understanding. They're not backing OER because it's a trend or because somewhere we have to align with SDGs. They're backing it because this is the solution for our users, the solution for our students, it's the solution for society. So this is, to me, really reflecting what we're seeing on the ground. Faculty awareness and training, I think it's something that we can address. Okay, it is definitely a significant factor, but it's something that can be addressed, and it can be addressed from the bottom. I mean, libraries, colleagues, OER champion. There's a strong team there to try to break that issue. The financial incentive and funding, yes, it is needed, as I said earlier. From a back end and from a creation, if you don't have the tool, if you don't have access to the platform, there's only so far you can go. So there is a need for a significant financial investment initially. And if it's done at institutional level, great. But realistically, you would want partnership, collaboration between higher education institution to share platform, to share the tools, and potentially access to those tools and platform being given at sectoral level, and this is where the policies are coming in. This is when national funding, European funding is coming in.
If I could interpret these results from my point of view, I would say that this one means that teachers, from the teacher's point of view, teachers need to be recognized and awarded in their work. And this is where institutional support and policies go. They are enthusiastic enough to do it, but they just need a little bit of, saying, okay, you're doing a great job, we acknowledge that. And they will do it in spite of everything, So if you get the first one, that you have institutional support and policies which are defining how to do it and support you and do it in a way that they acknowledge your work and recognize it, then I think the others will just go on and will be integrated as well. Angélica, maybe you would like to comment as well on this.
I suppose there's a paper that we published as a follow-up from the piece of research that I mentioned earlier on in 2020, and we're happy to put a link here, that kind of explore possibilities around and these challenges for implementation in institutional levels. It is spiraled around the theme of a potential devolved model of management of OER through institutions in a way that those are managed locally and then merged nationally. It was a proposal at the time. It wasn't progressed because of lack of funding as well, being one of the reasons, but also because considerations around who is responsible for curating the quality of content that it's put into repositories, where the responsibilities reside. And at the moment, the repositories for teaching, for research are progressively moving to being portals for corridors for information to information that is hosted elsewhere. So for argument's sake, I could have my research output somewhere, and these portals are just kind of pointing to those instead of storing it natively in the institutions. And I think the direction that we pointed in that paper kind of went to that direction, in that we would have our OER open to the world and disseminated through our portfolios online, through our social media networks, professional networks, and so on. And then you can use these kind of central portals to curate that and showcase that and share it with the world in an articulated way. I think it's probably where things are going to be going, into a more less decentralized way, the one that kind of allows a high level of agency by researchers and teachers alike to create this online persona, if you like, or their online presence and their personal branding, if you like, through their work in a way that it allows to be accredited as well, and it does, I suppose, also contribute to your academic standing. So that is I suppose, where things would be potentially going, as far as I can see.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who responded in our question. It can be hard to, okay. Maura Flynn said the factors are so interlinked, so it can be hard to rank them. Yeah, we find everyone important. We have a question or comment from Snezhana saying our work is the property of the faculty. We lack legislation. I think it's quite common often that it's not quite clearly said what is property of the faculty and property of the person, the copyright issue. So maybe someone would like to comment on that.
Claire? I do remember a long discussion about this some 15 years ago when we started the project on the National Repository, because a number of institutions did have this policy in place that when you worked there, anything you produced was the property not only of the faculty but of the institution. And if you left to go and teach in another institution, strictly speaking, you weren't even to bring your teaching materials with you. That wasn't the case everywhere. So first of all, we have this mismatch within the sector, that some institutions took that view and others didn't. So that was something that we tried to address through that project, and at least to put it on the agenda, that institutions would talk about this and revisit this, because at the same time you had MIT doing that early work in the States where they released all of the content. You had philanthropic projects in the UK with the Open University releasing content. So I think there is a bit of a gear change around it now, and I hope that's something that might be reflected more widely, that institutions don't associate content so strongly with teaching, and instead that they would see, pardon me, there's an alarm ringing here. I don't know if you can hear it on the mic, but I'll mute in a moment. So I think it needs work, but it's hopefully something that we will see changing. I'm going to mute for a second.
I'm sorry. I hope, Claire, it's nothing serious that you have to run out or something like that. But let's move. You already mentioned GenAI, and it's huge. We could talk about it for hours. But when we talk about role of open education resources and open education practice in playing in mitigating the potential ethical academic integrity concern related to GenAI. So actually, is GenAI also open education resource? What with the materials that GenAI produce from the open education resources, and just give it, what about it, and how can it enhance or damage the education as such? So who would like to be the first to start the comments?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one, Sandra. And that being said, I have no answer to the question. It's in 1 million. If I could have a $1 million question, $1 million for every question that opens up from there. And indeed, it's I've been teaching as part again of our academic practice programs for many years in terms of OER, Creative Commons attributions, and so on. And this kind of put spanners on the works in now reconceptualizing the very basics of that. To be honest, I'm sure there's loads of conversations happening elsewhere as well, and nobody has quite the answers. And we all know that, like, for example, using tools like Gamma AI resource, I was playing with that for argument's sake in preparation for this session today, and it took me just 1 minute literally to produce a website that I could easily modify and pass on as my own content on the implications of the GenAI tools and tools for attribution. I just share it there for argument's sake on the chat. If that is something that you can see as an example. So yes, it opens up the question how to attribute that properly. You cannot really attribute it because that's effectively lifted from many millions of bits of content there, which seems to be coherent with that philosophical view that we build on existing knowledge, yet we are also effectively plagiarizing it without accreditation. So it is very tricky. I did actually put the question out there to see what others experts think of this. I am a member of one of the GISC, which is the UK-based agency on digital education in UK, and they have a special interest group on artificial intelligence. And yes, likewise, nobody seemed to have many answers around it. For the time being, some preventative measures, for example, that are suggested is that everything that we produce using this kind of resources, GenAI tools, should be accredited in some way. One of the suggested accreditations, I'm also happy to share in the chat for your participants to look at as an example from someone, and let me actually accredit the source of that contribution was from Gray Mitten in Newcastle upon Tyne University. And it's just, I suppose, some common, I suppose, disclosure in terms of trying to showcase these principles of transparency that we are trying to get our students to adopt when using GenAI tools. We should also, I suppose, demonstrate them as much as possible. And if we're using these tools for producing resources, then it's only fair that we demo or model that practice as well. Excuse me, that's an alarm going on there. Some also were suggesting the use of Perkins AI assessment scale that you would be familiar with in the so commonly called traffic light system, where you can facilitate your students to use different levels of GenAI tool depending on your learning outcomes and also the assessment scenario. And something like that, it should be perhaps created so as to establish to what extent we're using GenAI tools in transparent ways for our own research outputs, our own assessment processes, and also for content creation. So if it's the case that I am perhaps taking full credit for creating a resource. I should also declare openly that I have not leaned heavily on these tools, perhaps beyond editing purposes, or likewise, if it's something that I am quite happy, like this little example here, to do a little experiment to see what comes up, and for this to be a source of discussion or co-creation, perhaps I can fully acknowledge that is the case, that it was fully created using an AI source in literally 1 minute. So yeah, more questions and answers. I'm very happy to hear what others may want to say about it.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, I ask participants in comments to share their views on that. Maybe Claire or Celine would like to add something on this question.
Thank you, Sandra. I think one thing I would say in a more general sense, because currently I've been asked to focus a lot on education for sustainable development, I don't think we can avoid the interaction of these topics for much longer, and maybe that's already something that's under discussion in lots of colleagues, universities and institutions, because we know about the clash of issues there. There's the whole issue of resources and what it's taking to use the generative AI tools in terms of computing power and the environmental impact, at the same time as universities are trying to work out how to use them for a benefit, and at the same time as they're pursuing goals around sustainability. So again, I have no answers on this, but I think, again, we want to avoid a separation of the topics at the strategic level and the leadership level. And I think that they are going to have to be brought together in strategic goals to, we can't avoid one, we can't have one without the other. So I think that's going to be really difficult to tease that out. But again, I would say open practices have a role to help there, because that's going to be one way we can use to address this. And there's so much work done over many years that can be brought back into the discussion now.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, still lots of questions and puzzles. And Celine, maybe your comment as well, if you like to share.
Look, again, it's fluid. What we thought we knew last week is changed this week and will be changed again next week. So, we just have to have clear rule of engagement, I think, with it. Can we put an open license on something that has been generated using an AI tool? This is probably an ethical question. Is it okay to put an open license on something that has been used sometimes in complete breach of copyright? Now, again, this is an ethical question. Can we reuse, again, something that has been already openly licensed, and that has gone through the use of an AI tool? A lot of questions there. What I'd say, purely from library perspective, because we're there to support academic integrity and we're there to guide our users, transparency, accountability. Whatever you use, you tell us what you use, when you use it, and how you use it. And then at least we've established that fact. And after that, the interpretation and the rules of engagement are going to change going forward. But I think if we can agree on that, on accountability, on transparency, then we will have graduates that will be much more solid, and was more self-assured in what they're producing going into the world of employment. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you very well summarized it, how we should proceed. There will be always questions, there will be always dilemmas, but we should have, in our understanding and institution understanding, a concrete idea of what we want to achieve and do. And by doing that, we will find the solutions in progressing. Yeah, thank you. And for the last question, we have to think about higher education perspectives, and we already saw that policies and support from the national level, from institutional level, is important. So, in your opinion, what policy changes are needed to support a more systematic shift toward open education in higher education institution? So, Claire, maybe we can start with you here.
Thank you, Sandra. Yeah, I think something that was touched on earlier is the issue around what's recognised and rewarded. And when it comes to teaching, this is a long-running discussion as well, that what we tend to see in the university sector is reward and recognition of research more so than teaching, although teaching awards and teaching fellowships and so on are part of the landscape now. When it comes to promotion and the kind of recognition through the ranks of universities, that is very often tied to research achievements. So one of the other strands of work that's been going on in Ireland and led by the National Forum has been around creating a framework for professional recognition. There are existing frameworks elsewhere in the world, and close to us in the UK, there's a professional standards framework which is linked in with the Advanced HE accreditation. So we may see some form of system like that coming in Ireland, and I think that will influence policy within and strategy within the institutions then to reflect that and reward it. And what we might see then is a greater emphasis on what people are doing in their practice and innovating in teaching. So clearly open educational resource use and open educational practices could be part of that and could be recognised and rewarded through those frameworks. And we've got space to have that discussion in Ireland because we don't have it yet. We've got a prototype that hasn't been something that's been piloted nationally. That was some work before the forum completed its last strategy in 2021. So that's now being, I believe some of that work and conversation has restarted now with the new forum team, and they're going to be looking at that. So I think there is a space there to get that on the agenda and to encourage that, and perhaps that's something that people could consider in their own jurisdictions, and that, you know, we reflect some of that national work in our local strategies. And then I think it falls to people within teams such as the one I am in, if we're in academic development teams, that we take that integrated approach. So in the design of the portfolio type assessments that we might do with academic staff and other staff who are teaching, that outputs can include open educational resources and publication of those or upload to a suitable space. So again, as was said earlier, that we're walking the walk, that we integrate that through our practice, because that's often, you know, that's a big step forward, but it actually can be quite difficult to do it even within teams that are talking about this and want to do this. It's just because of the usual practical constraints. And then I think the link through to the Sustainable Development Goals in the round and to the work around achieving sustainable educational development and education for sustainable development, I think would be key, because it's such a current driver. And if we can look for the linkage there, that's already part of national policy, it's part of national strategy and filtering through to the institutions. So if we're talking about the immediate time frame, I think that's a lever that we've got there that can help with all of this work in open.
Yeah, thank you. And I think national level is very important because institutions can have they may want to do something and they can have their own policies and strategies, but without the national support, they're diminished in that way. They're not so much integrated. So maybe Celine, can you have your view on this question as well, just shortly adding to what Claire said?
Sandra, I completely agree with what you've just said, that there's a need at national level, there's a need at sectoral level, absolutely. But if we were to see terminology being slightly tweaked in strategic plans, for example, you know, we all have inclusion, we all have equity, we all have all those words in our strategic plans, but we don't have open yet. We don't, you know, and this is only a little tweak. So if these could start slowly appearing at higher level within the institutions, that would make a change. Now, it's already there for the majority of, let's say, teaching and learning policies and strategy. So it's there, middle ground, it's there on the ground, but we need it a bit higher. But I don't think we are that far. If it is appearing in teaching and learning strategy, it will eventually trickle into strategic plans, and if it is in missions and strategic plans, it'll get traction. Absolutely, that would be my my view on it. Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe Angélica, for you, for final thought, we do sometimes have everything in the policies and strategies. Actually, sometimes it's just a piece of paper. How to make it in action? What would be your comment here?
I am a believer of the cultural change. There's this kind of sentence that sometimes you hear about, in that culture, it's a strategy for breakfast. We've talked about how important is top-down level policies, but we need to internalize this in many levels. I suppose the fact that it taps into so many issues. What is the added value of us as educators, especially within the current framework and current dynamics imposed by the technical developments that we see? Which is our duty as educators? How can we contribute to society role in a wider sense that link to the SDGs and the value of education? It's very much a value driven and philosophical consideration for me, and it relates to your personal identity as a teacher as well. So yeah, I think that's the real sustainable way forward.
Thank you. I'm just now. Thank you for your answers and for your thoughts. We are coming to the end of the session. I really wish to thank my speakers for sharing their expertise and know-how and giving us the good floor for ideas and next steps into making open education resources and using them in pedagogical way as practices in order to enhance the quality of teaching and learning. And let me just in the end share some announcements we have related to the Eden events. So just let me share. So we are coming soon to the June in Bologna, in Italy, for the Eden annual conference. We will talk about Bologna process there, certainly, but the topic of the conference is artificial intelligence and issues related to that. The time to submit your papers is still open, so we invite you to join us in Bologna. The next event will be in November. It will be Eden Digital Education Leadership Academy, which will be in Barcelona, which is aimed for leaders and policymakers, people who has the role to make decisions, to design policies and strategies and enhance the new mind change, mind shift and make things better. And last but not least, I invite you all to submit your papers to publish in Eurodl, which is a free and open journal supported by the Eden. And coming to the end, I wish to thank you all for joining us today, for listening to us, contributing to the session. And once again, thank you to my speakers. Bye.
Bye.